ladies and gentlemen, friends, Marilyn and Gerald's son. And suddenly, after about 14 years since he's passed, he comes to life again in the most moving way imaginable. And just to see the last letter on screen brings back so much to my mind. When I sat beside him in the Central Criminal Court during trials, I was a young student at the time. We were defending a murderer, and I watched him take a note in a very small notebook, and Gerald always wrote with a pen and ink. He had a bottle of ink with him, and he filled the pen as he needed to go along. And his handwriting was minute. He never crossed a T, he never dotted an I, and his writing sloped upwards from left to right along these very small pages. But what was so interesting about it, and his ability, I'll come to this in a moment, his ability to take a note was verbatim and incredibly accurate. But being a lawyer, and I was one myself, one of the things you have to have is a solicitor who could take a good note, and you have to have yourself a very good memory. Nowadays I have a very bad memory and I'm getting on, but when I was young I had a good memory, and Gerald had a good memory, so he could remember the evidence pretty well verbatim as it came up in court, because you really have to be able to refer back to what the last witness said and what 10 witnesses said 10 days ago and 13 days ago. And it is quite an art form. That's why I retired. Because I can't remember anything anymore. But I can't remember what I did 5 days ago or what I had for breakfast this morning, but I can remember. And suddenly when Yvonne mentioned and Marilyn mentioned the seminar here 25 years ago, came back to me as well, because I was here. I do remember it, and I actually now remember two of the speakers. Marilyn, I'm sorry, I don't remember your speech.
That's quite all right.
But I remember Louis Lenton being extremely witty and joicing, and I remember Gerald being very angry and acerbic and very critical of the Irish government, and he went back to the time of De Valera when he refused to let the Kindred token in after the Anschluss. I think Gerald was part of the delegation that went to see De Valera in the 40s about it. I mentioned Gerald's handwriting. I don't know how it assisted Marilyn in her dissertation. I don't know how she read and deciphered his crabbed handwriting. But one amusing anecdote about him is he always signed his name in one word, one long word, which was Gerald Y. Goldberg. It was all ran together. And I remember once he sent off for some books or something or other from UK, signed his letter, Gerald Y. Goldberg, and it came back addressed to Salvage Lewis. So nobody could decipher or read his handwriting. So Gerald was an inveterate reader. From the time he was a young man, he bought books. And he kept everything he bought. And he bought magazines, had them bound, and he kept those until the point was reached where there was absolutely no room in the house for anything. But he kept all his earliest books were Tinker Library, which were like sixpence each. And he bought those, and then he bought Traveller's Library, it was a Traveller's World, all the classics and all the histories. And from a very early age he was an inveterate reader. Up to the time that he died, he was reading books. And I would actually venture to say that his best friends were books. He just loved reading, and he had a phenomenal memory. And he also could read very fast, and he could absorb material at a rate of knots like a sponge. And he managed to drift from one subject to another. I mean, Marilyn refers to a scholarship on Joyce, but that was only one phase, probably a short phase in his own odyssey. He was very interested in Swift for a period of time, wrote a short monograph on Swift and the city of Cork, and during the time that he was researching Swift, books were arriving in crate loads. They were being stored all over the place, the attic, the garage, everywhere. And then he moved to Joyce, and there was another library was acquired overnight, and then it moved to Shakespeare, and then there was an enormous library of Shakespeare, just filled the whole house. And it went on from phase to phase to phase. So he had certainly had a great interest in Joyce. Did certainly a lot of research on and I'm really thrilled that Marilyn found that she got great value from his knowledge and from the letters that he sent her. And it's very moving for me to hear him being brought back to life again in this scholarly way, and it is a great accolade to him, which I think he would really enjoy, because he might have been remembered as a great lawyer, and he certainly was a remarkably good lawyer. I think that was his métier. But he was also a politician of sorts, historian of sorts, sports addict, you know. But I think the thing that he would like to be remembered for, above all else, is scholarship. And that's what he enjoyed, that's what he devoted his energy and his time to, in so many different fields, in so many different ways. I can assure you that when I was a young barrister, and I received briefs from him, it really is the job of the barrister to look up the law, to know the law. That's our specialty. But when you got a brief from Gerald, you didn't have to look up the law. The cases were all cited, statutes were all cited, everything was quoted, and you got a brief on what was called a judicature paper, which is the big sheets with a blue line down the left-hand side. And then when I sort of branched out from working with Gerald, it was certainly in my second career as a barrister, working with other solicitors, you didn't get a brief at all. It was really quite amazing that just got a book of evidence and no attendance sheets, no statements from the defendant or from any other witnesses, and you just had to go along and work it out yourself, make it up as you go along almost, at times. And you have to go into court and think on your feet. That's why I have no notes. I haven't prepared anything, by the way. I came without preparing anything. Just to revive sort of thoughts and recollections about the family and about Gerald's scholarship. But one thing that is interesting is that quotation that was on the screen. I want to be remembered as a Corkman. Not just as I want to be remembered as a Corkman. But he did a television programme with RTE just after he was Lord Mayor, in about 1978 or so, which was called Corkman, an Irishman and a Jew. So I think that whilst Marilyn refers to his ambivalence, whether he would go to Israel or whether he would stay here, it's reflected in that. Did he really want to be remembered as a Jew, or did he really want to be remembered as a Corkman? I rather fancy the latter. I think he probably wanted to be remembered as a Corkman. Gerald was born in a place called Rockfield, which is, I don't know if you know Cork and you knew where the synagogue in Cork was. There's a street called South Terrace. The synagogue was in South Terrace until last year, when it closed. And at the bottom of South Terrace, the Western Road comes down and it goes towards the river. And opposite that there is a little area called Rockfield. And that's where Gerald was born in 1912. And it's an extraordinary fact. Much as he was ambivalent about leaving Ireland and thought about it on many occasions, he never moved more than 2.5 miles from where he was born in his entire life. Now that is really quite an extraordinary fact. When he was born in Rockfield, they moved very rapidly over to Farnell Place. And he lived at 10 Farnell Place. They still have to put up a plaque there, they haven't done that yet. Then he moved from there when he got married to Mum Sheila, and they moved out to Rochestown Road in Douglas, which is still only 2.5 miles from Farnell Place. Now, I think that's quite an interesting fact to state, because for all that he was ambivalent about, will I go to Israel, will I stay here, he never had any intention of leaving Cork. You probably could take him out of Cork for a while, but you really couldn't take Cork out of him. He was quintessentially a Corkman for the whole of his life. And the same is true of the late Fred Rosehill, who was really the man who kept the spirit light burning in Cork for certainly the last 50 years, when people were leaving the community, when they were going to Israel and to England and to America in the 50s, in the late 50s. And by the 60s, the community had considerably dwindled from when I was a kid growing up, certainly a few hundred families, to a lot less, maybe half of that. And then throughout the 60s it dwindled further and further. And by the end of the 60s that synagogue really should have been closed, because it was just not possible to keep the community going. There wasn't enough people to make what's called a minyan. That's a quorum to have an Orthodox service. But Fred Rosehill kept that synagogue going. He kept it open and used all the time until he died last year. And after he died, or before he died rather, about 6 months before he died, the synagogue closed. And that really was, I think, what finished Fred. Well, he was nearly 90. But Fred always said, I mean, he also said this. I mean, he said to me not that long ago, 10 years maybe, I went over to Israel, I had a bundle of cash in my wallet, and I was going to buy a place to live and move there. You know, I couldn't do it, he says, I couldn't do it. So I think that you could take Fred out of Cork, but you couldn't take Cork out of Fred. And the same, I think, is true of Gerald. He really was quintessentially a Corkman. He was a Corkman, and he had this affinity to Joyce. Now here's an interesting thought from Ireland. What if Joyce and Gerald had met? What would Gerald and Joyce have talked about? And how would they have got on? You know, I think they might have got on that well. They were both huge egotists, probably both primary narcissists. They both had, I think, large ideas about themselves, and Gerald he wasn't shy about boasting about how good he was at everything that he did. And he always said it. He said it publicly as well as privately. And so it would be interesting to see what they would have had in common and what they would have talked about. And Gerald might have wised him up a little bit about Judaism, and Joyce might have wised Gerald up about Irish politics. So they might have had a discussion about Arthur Griffith. And that's another controversial subject. So I know we had a lecture here from Colin Kenny, I think last year, trying to dispel the idea that Arthur Griffith was an anti-Semite. And Then the other interesting thing is to think about, well, how many people read Joyce? How many people have actually read Joyce? I have to put up my hand and say, I haven't read Joyce to any great degree. When I got as far as page 300 of Ulysses, I think he was grinding me down, you know. It's getting weary here, and finding it very hard to keep going. The only way to read Ulysses is to actually read it out loud or to hear it read. So I have heard quite a lot of it read on that wonderful recording made by RTE for the centenary, which they broadcast in a 24, 28-hour continuous broadcast. So I didn't get the nighttime bit, but I got quite a lot of it. Then I've heard other parts of it read from time to time, and I've heard recordings read by Siobhan McKenna and Cyril Cusack of Shem the Penman and Anna Lydia Purabell. But apart from that, who can read Finnegan's Wake? Who has sat down and read all of Finnegan's Wake? Who has sat down and read all of Ulysses? You know, it's a bit like Shakespeare, everybody's heard of it, but who has read them? Now, here we have one man who has got a claim to fame because he's Joyce's grandnephew, Ulrich Telemat. I'd like to welcome you this afternoon. What a wonderful pleasure to have you here.
Well, it's a terrific pleasure for me to be here. Thank you.
It's a great pleasure to have you, particularly for this particular lecture, this particular day. And the other interesting fact is you know, the other interesting comparison is with Homer. But you see, Joyce's reputation rests on two books, Ulysses and Finnegan's Wake, one of which has probably not been read by many people, and the other has been read by a few people. But Homer has been read by a few more people, and the Odyssey read by even more people. And Carl and I spent the summer reading to each other the Odyssey and the Iliad, and that was extremely rewarding, and recommend that to anybody. Maybe we should read Ulysses to each other as well. The only way to get through it. If you think about the fact that Homer's reputation rests on two books, and Joyce's reputation rests on two books. And Joyce then adapted the sequences from the Odyssey. His book is in 24 sections. Each section represents 1 hour of the day. The Odyssey is in 24 sections, and it's about a long journey. And this Ulysses is also about a long journey. So it is a modern interpretation of the Odyssey. And what's lovely about Odysseys is that when you are on the path of journeying along, you meet people. And your paths cross, you meet people. And like 25 years ago I met Marilyn, and for 25 years our paths have parted again. But how wonderful and how lovely that they cross again and that we have the pleasure, and in fact a great pleasure, of a wonderful lecture from the incomparable Joycean scholar. And it is really a great thrill that she's here. She's come back and our paths have crossed again. And yesterday I had the pleasure in Catherine's wonderful garden party meeting many lovely people and wondering when will our paths cross again. Because that's one of the great pleasures and the great joys of life. You pass and you repass like ships in the night, and you call each other from time to time. Thank you, Miranda.